War Dogs. War Dogs is an American black comedy crime film based on a true story and released in the year 2016. The plot of the film follows a duo of friends, David and Efraim, who land a massive contract of delivering 100 million rounds of AK ammunition worth millions to the US government to deal arms to Afghan forces. Little did they know that breaking a high-paid task will end them up with some very shady people. The film starts on January 1, 2008 with an international arms dealer, David Pachuz, who's being brutally beaten by a trio of kidnappers. He narrates his story of how he became an arms dealer. According to David, war is not about defending the country, but is all about weapons. The film transitions to 2005 in Miami Beach, when David is a certified massage therapist, massaging rich dudes for $75 an hour. David never had a consistent job and always kept changing his professions. He even dropped out of college after his first semester. So, as usual, he gets fed up with his massaging profession and decides to try something big this time. He plans to sell quality bed sheets wholesale to all of the retirement homes in South Florida, but his venture fails and he sinks his entire life savings. Bewildered, David attends his friend's funeral, where he spots his old best friend, Efraim, who had moved to LA when they were in 10th grade. Both the friends were elated to meet each other after ages. Efraim tells David that he was dealing in weapons along with his uncle, but his uncle scumbagged him, which is why Efraim has come back to Miami to start his own shop here. The duo reminisce about their old times and then go to a dealer to buy weed. The weed dealers mess up with Efraim when they refuse to give him weed after taking $300 from him. Efraim retaliates and scares off the dudes after he sloppily fires his gun in the air. David's scared to see his friend with a weapon, but Efraim assures David that he has a Class 3 firing license. Later, David returns home to his girlfriend Iz and happily tells her about his friend. The next day, Efraim calls David to his office, where David discovers that Efraim owns his own company, AEY Incorporated, through which he sells arms to the US military. While the besties are getting high, Efraim tells David that he has dealt with guns, bullets, body armor, and gas masks to American Special Forces in Iraq and made quite a heavy amount of money. David is pretty impressed and surprised when Efraim shows him a government public website that contains every military contract up for bidding. Efraim explains that he skips the big ticket items and looks for the small orders that are ignored by giant defense contractors. Later, both the friends go to a lunch where Efraim further elucidates his business of how it's flourishing and is worth millions. David returns home where his girlfriend informs him that she's pregnant, leaving David concerned about meeting the expenses. David shares his concern with Efraim, who pokes fun at him for feeding his kid by massaging dudes. But seeing David actually worried, Efraim offers him a job at his company. At first, David refuses, as he and his girlfriend are totally against the war, but Efraim makes him understand that he should think about the money only. David realizes that compared to his other prospects, joining hands with Efraim will be a chance of a lifetime, and he accepts the job. Later, he lies to Iz by telling her that he'll be selling the bed sheets to the US military instead of retirement homes. Then onward, David spends the next 6 weeks in a crash course on arms dealing. After learning everything, he starts scouring the government's websites all day long, searching for overlooked contracts that they could attain. In the middle of the night, he'd be back in the office, making deals and forging relationships with weapons manufacturers all over Eastern Europe, while lying to Iz that he's doing conference sales with sheet suppliers in Pakistan. Ralph Slutsky, Efraim's silent partner and local businessman, owned 14 dry cleaners all across Miami. He put up the money in AEY to back the deals in exchange for seemingly 25% of the company. Ralph was under the impression that Efraim was an observant Jew and that AEY only sells arms to protect Israel from its enemies. One night at a club, David tells Efraim that a guy named Henry Girard wants to talk to him. Efraim flips out since Henry is a high-profile person who's been supplying to both sides of every conflict for the last 20 years. Just then, Efraim hits on a girl asking her for some sexual favors. The girl's boyfriend catches him red-handed and beats him and David to a pulp. After getting beaten, the duo end up at a small restaurant where David gets a call from Captain Santos in Baghdad asking him to provide several thousand pistols to the Iraqi police. Efraim is overjoyed after landing this massive contract that will earn them around $600,000 and celebrates with David. Next, while David is at a doctor's appointment with Iz, he receives a call from Captain Santos inquiring him about the arms delivery. Through him, David finds out that Italy has passed legislation banning all arms shipments to Iraq. Although this is a huge problem, David acts cool, assuring the captain that he has been working to get the shipment to Iraq in time. After the phone call, Iz excitedly informs Dave that they're having a baby girl. Later at a gun-shooting arcade, David's worried about the shipment, but Efraim seems pretty relaxed and has figured out to send the shipment from Jordan to Iraq since Jordan does not have an embargo on arms shipment. In the evening, Iz invites her friends over for dinner where a friend of hers happens to know about Efraim and his prior business deals. She warns David to be careful as she knows someone who was swindled by Efraim. Just then, Efraim barges in and tells David that Jordanian Customs has seized their arms shipment. David gets a call from Captain Santos, who's enraged due to the late delivery and threatens to get AEY canceled for cause. Efraim is really anxious, as getting canceled means that AEY would be blacklisted from any future contracts. Iz overhears their conversation and is furious to discover David's true nature of business. Soon, David and Efraim have to fly to Amman, Jordan to work out the shipment problem. Knowing that the government won't solve their problem, Efraim bribes locals to release the shipment, and finally, after waiting for 3 days, he gets back his guns. The locals provide David and Efraim with a driver named Marlborough to transport them and the shipment to Iraq since they couldn't arrange a flying permit for them. Despite David's reluctance, Efraim convinces him to go to Iraq by road, so the trio set out for Baghdad. On their way at night, they're stopped by a border patrol who demands to inspect the cargo truck, but Marlborough bribes them with cigarettes, after which they were allowed to pass the border. Finally, the trio crosses the border and enters Iraq. The next morning, Marlborough stops at a gas station to refill the tank. David wakes up in the truck near a gas station and is petrified to see a dead body there. Efraim cools him down by telling him that it's normal to see a dead body in a war zone. All of a sudden, David spots armed insurgents approaching the truck, so he calls Efraim, who had gone to take a piss, to run away immediately, leaving Marlborough back. However, Marlborough manages to jump in the moving truck, and the trio successfully evade the armed insurgents. They finally arrive at the military base, where Captain Santos is highly impressed to see the guns and appreciates them for surviving the Triangle of Death to reach there. Efraim and David are heavily compensated with cash and are escorted by military to the airport. After arriving back in Miami, the duo start to lock more and more business deals. They buy matching cars and luxurious apartments. David even burns away all the bed sheets that he bought wholesale. Seeing the company thriving, Ralph also increases his investment in AEY by $10 million, after which they expand their operation and hire a whole new team to scour through the website precisely. Meanwhile, David's daughter Ella is born. One night while David is scrolling through the website, he finds a massive contract posted by the U.S. government worth $300 million for 100 million rounds of AK-47 ammunition, which would earn the duo $100 million profit. Among defense contractors, this is called the Afghan deal, and it would be the biggest opportunity that AEY would ever see. So Efraim and David quickly fly to Las Vegas to attend Vegas X, which is a defense technology expo to unveil the latest in warfare. However, the duo learned that even if they land the Afghan deal, it would be impossible for them to source a deal of this magnitude, as it would require piecing together multiple vendors from all around the world, dozens of shipping outfits, and hundreds of permits. Dejected, David plays blackjack where he meets the legend among arms dealers, Henry Girard, and explains to him his situation. Later at night, Efraim and David have dinner together with Henry, where Henry tells him that he can fulfill the Afghan deal order as he has access to massive unused weapons depots in Albania. When Efraim inquires Henry about why himself is not bidding on the order, it turns out that Henry is barred from doing any business with the US government as he's on a terrorist watch list. While Efraim agrees to deal with Henry, David expresses his refusal to work with a man on a terrorist watch list. But Efraim somehow convinces David that this is their big chance and that everything will go smoothly. The next morning, Efraim and David inform Henry at his hotel about their agreement to deal and then to fly to Tirana, Albania, to see the merchandise in person. Henry sends a driver and a car to pick them up from the airport, after which they reach the warehouses from the Albanian army. Efraim is ecstatic to see 126 million rounds of ammo there, but David is quite concerned to see it since there's a global shortage of ammo going around the world. After testing the ammunition, the duo flies back to Miami to submit their bid to the US government. After 5 months, when David is on a beach having family time with Iz and Ella, Efraim arrives to inform him that they have won the contract. The duo then start preparing for an interview with the procurement officers from the US military, for which they carry out forging the books and legal documents of their company to make it seem like their company is able to handle this massive deal. They finally reach the Rock Island Armory to give the interview where Efraim learns that they have ridiculously underbid their competitors by $53 million, meaning they could have earned an extra $50 million. Disappointed, David returns home only to find Iz furious with him for keeping from her about his adventure in Iraq. She even finds stacks of cash in the bedroom that David hid from her. Frustrated, she leaves with Ella to live with her mother. Before flying back to Albania, David makes a partnership contract of 30-70 to make things official between him and Efraim agrees. David reaches Albania, where he keeps trying to talk to Iz, but to no avail. While preparing the shipment, David discovers that the AK ammunition is Chinese-made, as the crates have the Chinese language written all over them, making them illegal since America has an embargo against China. David informs Efraim about it, and they talk to Henry, who straight away refuses to take any blame. Efraim flies to Albania with the idea to get the ammunition repackaged. Their Albanian driver, Bakshim, introduces them to his friend Enver, who owns a boxing and storage company. The duo locked the deal with Enver to repackage 100 million rounds of ammunition for $100,000. The shipment work starts, and David starts sending shipments eventually. While Efraim flies back to America, he finds out that Henry has charged them a 400% markup. He informs David about it and also his plan to cut Henry out of the deal. David strictly condemns the idea and threatens to return back to Miami without completing the shipments. But Efraim ignores David, cutting Henry out of the deal and also destroying the only copy of his partnership contract with David. When Henry finds out about it, he gets David kidnapped, brutally beaten, and threatened at gunpoint, transitioning the scene to the start of the film. Furious, David returns back to the warehouse only to find out from Enver that Efraim hasn't paid him the repackaging fee. David promises to give him the money and set out for Miami. Before leaving, Bakshim's wife approaches him, inquiring about her husband, who's gone missing. David returns to Miami and decides to quit AEY. He goes to Iz and reveals his true motive for going to Albania, assuring her that he will never lie to her again and continue his job of being a massage therapist. He then goes to Efraim, demanding the money that he's owed, but Efraim refuses to work through the deal. David boils with anger when he sees that his partnership contract has gone missing. 3 months later, Ralph meets David, mediating a truce between Efraim and him. Efraim offers David a severance package, which means paying him $50,000 for 4 years. David loses his cool and threatens to leak evidence of AEY's falsified company documents. He rats everything out about their Afghan deal in front of Ralph, making Efraim furious. Later, David and Efraim receive a call from the New York Times, which wants to cover their disguised story of ammunition. Soon, the duo is arrested by the FBI, who has been contacted by Enver. It turns out that after Enver reported Efraim and David, the State Department launched a full-scale investigation. They even contacted Ralph and made him wear a wire in the restaurant meeting between David and Efraim, where David unraveled the incriminating truth. David and Efraim are all over the news for defrauding the U.S. government by selling them outdated, defective Chinese ammunition. Efraim is charged with over 70 federal crimes and sentenced to 4 years in prison, and David is sentenced to 7 months of house arrest after he pleads guilty. After David completes his sentence, Henry plans a setup to meet him, apologizing to him for getting him kidnapped in Albania. David questions him about the missing Bakshim, and the film ends with Henry thanking David for leaving out his name in the testimony and offering him a briefcase full of cash in exchange for no more questions. The movie has a rating of 7.1 on IMDb. The budget of this movie was around $50 million, and at the box office it earned $86.2 million. I hope you all liked this video. If yes, then make sure to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more movie recaps.